guys. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. This is a podcast by Two Tokens. My name is Erich Schnoekel, working for Two Tokens, working for Zyzon, and we're going to talk about the invoice market use case, where we are trying to establish a token standard for invoices. And with me today are Arnout Buschenhenke from ABN AMRO, Marc Meyer from CrowdZ, and Bhairav Patel from Defactor. And well, guys, perhaps you can start introducing yourself, starting with Bhairav, please.
Just because I'm next to you.
Yeah, you're next to me.
So welcome from sunny Rotterdam. My name is Bhairav Patel. I'm the tech lead for Defactor. And Defactor is a blockchain-based project that provides access for traditional businesses to liquidity pools or money that's sitting on the blockchain. So one of the very first use cases that we have is with invoice financing, supply chain financing, so where companies can place their invoices onto our platform. We tokenize those, and then they're able to access funding through that. Obviously, as we grow, we're looking to increase the number of asset types that we're going to be adding onto the platform, so real estate, digital assets, etc. So very excited to be here to talk about the standardization of invoices.
Okay, great. Marc, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah,
please.
this is Marc Meyer from CrowdZ, from sunny London as well. CrowdZ is a US-based company in California. We do invoice finance, so we have created a marketplace where we put together investors with SME willing to sell the invoices. So far, we've been quite successful. Last year, we funded about 50 million of invoices, and we work alongside. So we have two product sets. One is a multi-tenant platform where you can have several investors bidding on the same invoices, or we have also a white label solution where a company like Meta, we're working with them since last year. But EG as well, who is an investor, a real estate investor in Australia. Citibank as well, working with us on white label solutions to basically fund the supply chain. Part of the project and what we're trying to achieve is moving all the receivable we have on the blockchain. And I believe we're gonna talk about a bit why we're doing it later. But as the next step, we've been quite successful with a traditional way, and the next step is to move the receivable on the blockchain.
Okay, thank you. And then we have Arnout from a traditional finance background, the ABN AMRO Bank.
So traditional banking also has to play its part, right? I'm Arnout Buschenhenke, Director Innovation for ABN AMRO Asset-Based Finance. And basically my role is to find new ways of performing asset-based finance transactions and connect us to the new world. Why is a bank in something that is really fintech and very distributed with our centralized environment and approach in the market? Because basically that's the business model that we have. We believe that to become a serious player in the digital age, you have to move with that, and therefore we are looking to ride the wave of new developments. And one of these waves is of course blockchain digital assets. And we feel that the invoice is a very good digital asset to change the world for a lot of entrepreneurs, and we aim to be a better bank for a better world in the future. So we hope that what we can add here will also make it easier for other entrepreneurs to do business. And that's also why we want to work with other parties like Defactor and CrowdZ, because if you work with others, then you can create standards, and when you create standards, business becomes easier, and we can remove friction.
Yes, it's certainly true. Also in the project are CMS lawyers, the law firm, and Erasmus University. And this morning we already had a workshop together where we discussed some of the I said things that we can run into but when using tokenization, talking about the different parties, the stakeholders in the processes and what their role would be, in the end to get to that token standard. How would a token standard change business for good? Marc, what is your opinion on that, and how would you implement that in the way you see business evolve?
I think first of all, I mean, the problem statement we have nowadays is it's a bit all over the place. You have obviously different standards in the industry. The way invoices, receivables are managed, are either done automatically or via spreadsheets, as we discussed this morning. So basically, it creates a lot of inefficiencies operationally, where the banks operate, and potentially having a true standard across all the players. First of all, will basically streamline all operations, so create efficiencies. That's, I think, the first thing. Probably also reduce everything related to fraud, because basically information becomes available across the different stakeholders and potentially could be verified. And eventually everything benefits from for the investors, obviously, but also for those looking for capital, because all of these inefficiencies creates high costs in industry. So an environment that probably a bit fairer as opposed to today, particularly when you think about the current economic climate, where basically interest rates going up, inflation is to the roof. So basically finding efficiencies will probably be beneficial for the months to come. So yeah, mostly like really creating efficiencies across the industry.
Okay, thank you. And Bhairav, is that a vision that you share with Marc, or do you see other opportunities, other changes that you as a company are working on?
So I think for us, a couple of things to add on to what Marc said is two important factors. One's transparency, and the other one's the interoperability. So Marc and I have already had a quick discussion on, CrowdZ are doing their thing, we're doing our thing, but if we don't have a standard, how can we do things together in that sense, right? So having a standard would allow us to be able to transfer NFTs to each other's, or transfer whatever it is, invoices in tokenized format to each other, so that then the sellers get the best deal, right? So that kind of also adds to the layer of transparency. So what we're trying to do at Defactor is give businesses the ability to see what funding is out there and what can they get for their invoice, right, or for their asset. And on the flip side, investors need to have a little bit of transparency. You have transparency on their side, and again, what is out there and what do they want to fund? How much do they, what risk appetites do they have? How can they mitigate their risks across portfolios, et cetera, et cetera. And I think those are with this common standard where everyone was able to know that this set of data is there, and it's same when they know what they're going to get from that data set. It helps with all these different things. And I think what's quite weirdly interesting about the invoice space is that an invoice is not the same in every country, which is you'd think it would be, but it's not. And so allowing us to do this kind of opens up a whole new set of opportunities for investors and for sellers.
Yes, and Arnout, you are in this business for a long time already with ABN AMRO, and doing this, working in this use case. How would it change your business model? Is that a thing that you are looking at for short term, or is that really a long term thing for the bank?
Well, for the bank, this is definitely a long term play. We know that in the short term, our current business models, they generate income, they help entrepreneurs, they help large corporations, and all those other players also have to change their way of doing business, not necessarily the business model, but the way they do it, in order to move to new technologies and adopt new standards. But a standard in itself, whether that has been created on a token or simply in an XML file like UBL, can just by existing change markets already, right? And in the way we currently conduct our factoring business, we are very, very traditional. Probably, I think you could say that we are one of those parties that you go to if you want to be very sure of getting financed against the terms that you agreed, and that you're going to go get a good price if you're a good client. But we also have high operational costs to run these deals, and in the fintech world, costs are far lower because of digital standards, and we feel that we need to be part of that in order to connect ourselves to that world once our customers are also ready to do so, and well, try to stay a step ahead. So the idea of us doing this is mainly to improve our business model, to help our customers in a better way, but also to make sure that when in future we go into this distributed world where Defactor and CrowdZ are assessing risks on all kinds of parties and their counterparts, that we could either be part of that game, or maybe even be a funder behind that, or be part of the investment circle, or be an advisor to our customers. There's multiple business models that could be used in order to make sure that the customers of ABN AMRO get best access to this market. And we do not necessarily feel that in a distributed market, we have to do all these things for our customers. They could probably do a whole lot of stuff themselves. But we also see that in the multitude of assets that is available and is coming available, probably customers will also seek for a party that can help them navigate that. And I think that we still are that.
But so, on one sense, you can say we can, as ABN AMRO, we can provide liquidity into this invoice market project. On the other side, you might be a door for your customers into the project as well. So, an asset originator, as it's called.
Well, at both ends, right? So, at asset origination, but also at the investment end.
And then the processes that can be developed on these token standard make it more efficient, like I think Marc and Bhairav both said, and so you stay relevant in the future as well in this.
Well, yeah, of course, this creates a way of remaining relevant for traditional banks, but it's not just about the relevance. It's also well, yeah, it's in our mission. We aim to be a better bank for a better world for generations to come. So with a balance sheet like the size of ABN AMRO, you can also actually make a difference. So if we are able to make a difference here, to move into a good space and help our customers move into a good space, then we are not just being relevant, but I think we're also shaping the market a little.
Okay, thank you. And Bhairav, want to?
Yeah, there was one thing I wanted to just going to say. Is obviously standardization helps reduce the barriers of entry, right? And what you can see is that a lot of banks in certain markets are leaving because the total cost of operation is high, as Arnout said. And I think what you're seeing is in certain places where you have standardization and there's a lower cost of entry for other players who can add additional services and do things that they're good at. That means that, as Arnout said, that the bank, larger institutions, can play a slightly different role than they were playing originally, and then they can get more involved because they are doing the things that they're good at, rather than trying to do everything which they may not necessarily be efficient at. I think and it's kind of a nice side effect of standardization.
Yeah, I agree.
You see that as a side effect as well, Marc? Is there how do you see that evolve from your side?
I mean, in terms of side effects against standardization. Yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, barrier to entry has become lower to every player in this industry. I agree. I mean, you look at, I'm just going to give an analogy with ISO 20022, where basically prior to ISO 20022 in Europe, has been a very ineffective solutions in Europe to make payments, and since we have that, not only cost is being reduced, it's more transparent. You have also new players in this industry, so basically it creates a better market for everyone. Likewise with open banking, there's some standardization as well, and create also a level playing field for everyone to create innovation. So yeah, I think the side effects will be really new players, but also more innovation in this industry, because then you can create scale and build on something that everybody can use, basically.
So if the result of creating this token standard is being a market that is more efficient, that will grow the market by how much? Can you give an estimation on how that would lead to more entrepreneurs offering their invoices and more liquidity getting into the market?
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I think that what I think is interesting here is that I don't think necessarily you get more. I think there is such a large amount of unbanked businesses out there that rather than creating more of liquidity, actually what you're doing is you're giving those businesses access to liquidity that they wouldn't normally be able to access, because obviously ABN AMRO, the big banks don't finance everybody, right?
True.
I think that's the key.
Okay. Yeah, clear. I understand that. But is there an estimation to make how much that will grow the market? Is because the market is already billions and still growing. Especially factoring is growing a lot every year, a year-over-year growth of double-digit percentage. So will this accelerate growth?
It's a difficult question. Like, personally, I cannot size the opportunity. We are really in the middle of trying to assess the efficiency. But I strongly believe that as you make the market more efficient, you're going to get more liquidity, because probably Arnout can confirm that. But basically, you have a type of assets that is not really liquid, in the sense that it's owned by, let's say, ABN AMRO, and basically cannot really move easily across different partners, different companies. So you create an open market where all of these assets, with blockchain, with this ledger, becomes really easily tradable. So creates a market where people are ready to invest or buy, on the secondary market or via syndication, and eventually this efficiency creates more liquidity. Having said that, to me, the market is growing. There is a hype at the moment. You have 2 companies working on invoice finance here. So it just shows that there is a lot of new players on this market, because there is growth and a lot of capital coming into this market.
And if you look at the trade finance gap, that's in trillions, right? So what you're looking at is, even if you can shave that down by a small bit, you're helping lots and lots of companies there.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things as well I would like to is the world of B2C. I come from B2C. I've seen decades of innovation, and the B2B world has been left on the side for a while. And you see a lot of competition right now in B2C, and now many players, even traditional like payments gateway like Stripe or Adyen, now looking at very, very strongly on the B2B world. So you see a lot of innovation now coming. Everybody sees that the market is highly inefficient, and there is a lot of value creation to capture.
I think Arnold made a point today. It was on syndication. I guess he can talk more about it. But again, I'm assuming that will open up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rod. So the thing with traditional financing of large deals, so even the deals that we are normally supposed to do, also brings us to the limits of what we regulatory can do, right? And regulation, of course, for large banks is also limiting in who we can finance in the smaller end, but in the larger end we have the same issue. So working with large invoices, large or very large customers, usually forces us to come in with syndicated deals, and setting up a deal syndicate and running agency for that are expensive activities. If you're talking about friction, it can take up to 9 months to negotiate a deal, and then the financing hasn't even started yet. So if in a world where there's an open market for these invoices, it's probably much easier to work with several parties together maybe even have some sort of a small market in which you work with these invoices, and make sure that these companies are funded adequately and quickly enough, accelerating their business by at least the time of negotiation.
Interesting to see how that works with the bigger tickets, but if you look at liquidity in general, actually, so you have the supply and demand side of things, of course, and without any provision of capital, then you fund no invoices. So how does that work? How have you implemented that, or how are you going to implement that?
So you're looking for a smaller invoice. So one of the key things that we're looking at, obviously, is building our own liquidity pools from on the one side with Defactor. And I think one of the key things there, again, is that, and obviously we're working with the likes of Centrifuge who have retail investors coming in. One of the key things there is giving them the ability to know what is there underlying what are they paying for, right? What are they actually putting money towards? And I think where we see that standardization as a big benefit is that, again, as I was mentioning before, is that transparency piece, right? So if we push a number of assets into a pool or pull those assets together, then people can see quite clearly the risk profile of that pool. They can see, where the debtors are, what country, what type of trade, what type of goods even they're dealing with.
And how would you do that? So transparency without revealing competitive information?
Exactly. So that it would be a disaggregation or kind of a anonymization of data, but to give you a high level, okay, you've got 20% exposure to Colombia, or you've got 20% exposure to consumer perishable goods, or whatever it is, right? It gives you that level of information that you don't firstly, retail investors wouldn't have this opportunity to put money into things like this normally. Now they have a new opportunity, but they also have better visibility. And I think going slightly off topic, one of the key things for us at Defactor is that you see such volatility in the decentralized finance space simply because of the way that people are yield farming or essentially investing in crypto. And I'm not going to say all of it, but there is some of it which is not based on very much. So once you can create the asset-backed finance into the DeFi space, you actually are you're putting money towards something tangible that you can understand and that you can see, and you see as real stuff moving across the world.
Yeah, but then in the end, you want to finance invoices. You help entrepreneurs, and how would you prevent then, I say, bots from trading in the secondary market and making money on?
So secondary markets are a little bit a separate thing, because that's when you're looking at securitization, and that's where things become. And then again, obviously, there's a KYC AML element there, and then there's obviously the regulatory aspect. So then you'll moving into a whole new different realm. But again, with the standardization, that should help in any kind of regulatory and compliance.
Right.
Yeah, there is actually a very good upside against the bot trading in the nature of an invoice, right? Especially when the invoice is treated as a utility. An invoice can never increase in value. It can only decrease in value. So if bots would be trading that around, they would have to find some sort of a way to increase the invoice value before they can do that. And it's fine if they want to try, because maybe someone can actually make some good value out of that. But in the nature of what we're trying to do with this standardization, we are working with invoices as they are. So they can be discounted, they can be reduced in value because they get insured, and that has a cost. They could even reduce in value over time. But increasing them in value would actually ask the buyer of the goods to increase the goods in value and maybe even put them back up for sale. So that is going to be a very difficult situation, if you ask me.
Yeah, clear. Yeah, I understand that, yeah. Marc, how would you, if you look at liquidity within your system?
Yeah, so we have a different approach compared to Defactor regarding liquidity pools. We don't have, at the moment, liquidity pools and no retail customer. We have an approach that is true sales. So basically, we don't fraction in the receivables. So we have mostly on the platform institutional investors or large organizations, but we're not tackling the retail market.
Just to
I
be
think
clear.
that we have. Go on.
Sorry, just to be clear, from a Defactor point of view, we're not. we're working with institutional capital. Retail is obviously one of the things that we want to hit further down the line because it's obviously a very heavily regulated market.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. So basically, where we see liquidity coming is obviously traditional players, but also like the project we have with Meta at the moment. It is basically a player that is not traditionally in this area, and the view was basically we want to do good in the supply chain and in the SME market in the US, and we want to provide capital. Because obviously they're quite cash rich and they can help the economy. Likewise, we see fund investment like EG wants also to potentially do something quite different to what we usually do with supply chain finance as well. So what we see is like a traditional player like ABN is willing to make this more efficient, potentially address the SME market because it's a market underserved at the moment, but also other type of funds who are not traditionally there are really willing to tackle this because as was mentioned earlier, there are very, very few assets at the moment, asset class that actually can offer stability with a high yield like this one. As mentioned, inflation high, stock market down. I wouldn't invest at the moment. I mean, the crypto market also is very volatile and going down. So it is really interesting, and we see more and more players with capital willing to invest in this environment.
Okay, there's one topic I still want to cover actually, and that's a thing that Bhairav brought up, and that is the moving assets from one place to the other. So the token standard, of course, should be blockchain agnostic. I know that you both are developing on different platforms. How would you see that being able in the future to trade assets when the references or the asset itself are stored on different blockchains? How do you see that evolve? Perhaps I can give you the word first, Bhairav.
Yeah, so again, this is something that we're actively looking at because we, as Defactor, we work with other liquidity pools and providers, so the likes of Centrifuge on one side. There's also other projects out there like Nous and Polytrade, and we're obviously taking assets from asset originators, and they can be anywhere. So for us, it's about creating a standard. So we've created our own standard. We've been working, obviously, since we've come across two tokens, we've been modifying our standard to work alongside what's being developed here. And then for us, it's really about locking that NFT into a pool sitting somewhere else. So you can either, at the moment, create a copy of that and lock that into another pool, or we essentially have our own Defactor chain, which will create that standard, and that standard will have then again NFTs locked into different pools. It's something that it's a complex area, right? It's not something that we can figure out straight away. There's a lot of different ways to cut it, and I think a lot of what we're looking at the moment is to see, okay, what is the appetite for investing into these assets, right? What are different investors looking for? What kind of covenants do they want on their pools, and how then do we most efficiently get that money out to asset originators who don't really care about what blockchain,
right?
Because for them, shouldn't be exactly no. none of this matters for them. So how can we do this in the most efficient way for the funders and for the asset originators? So for us, we've got about 2 or 3 different approaches. At the moment, we're doing a kind of a proof of concept on Algorand with one set of work, which is actually very closely aligned to what's there are 2 tokens. We came out with what we're doing initially with on Defactor, which is very closely aligned with Centrifuge. We're also looking at a third option or within our own kind of proprietary thing. So I guess the answer to that question is that we'll know more about this in about 2-3 months. In a couple of months.
Yeah, is that the same with you, Marc? Is that how you look at it as well? It's not the thing that you urgently look at the moment, but it's in the back of your minds.
Totally. I mean, if we speak about interoperability across different companies, we are an Ethereum house. We're planning to do on Polygon, but as you mentioned, Algorand, you have other chain. I mean, not one chain. Many chains will survive. Different players will use different chain. Regarding their reasons. eventually, yes, it's going to have to be cross-chain. And we will have to make sure, one of the things also we have to make sure that if you source an invoice on one chain, making sure it's not duplicated on another chain. So there are technology like zero knowledge proof that can potentially help to do that. But now eventually you look for the invoice where they are and you look for liquidity where it is basically. But not exactly as Defactor is looking at.
Okay, thank you. And it's not a thing that you are really looking into at the moment, Arnout, I suppose, because I don't think you have created a blockchain that you want to work on, so you're more distant to that, right?
Well, yes and no. We haven't created our own blockchain, of course, because we're not allowed. But we are following the market, and we aim to be agnostic as well, right? So we hope that a standard is agnostic. And that at the moment that we as banks are being allowed to enter this market more actively, and our customers are asking that we can also connect to the relevant networks. We've seen a lot of changes in networks that are most being used, and well, when you're an incumbent player, it's always difficult to prioritize which technology you're going to use when everything is so fluid. So we are really happy that we have the startups and scale-ups that want to partner up in a use case like this, in CrowdZ and Defactor, that actually have the agility to move with it and create this opening. And let's hope we gamble on the right ones, right? That are actually going to generate customer contact. Not so much that they should generate immense amounts of business, but when we are where the customers are, we are the right space to help them.
Okay, thank you. I think we can talk for a long time still about this, the topic. We already spent a couple of hours this morning talking about this topic, and but I still think that we have to conclude it. Perhaps a short round of last words for you guys. For me, I will. Let me say that in the notes you can find links to the companies and on the 2Tokens website, 2tokens.org, you can find more information on the invoice market use case and who's working on that with the relevant links to it as well. But perhaps the famous last words for let's start with Arnout.
Famous last words for the incumbent bank. I must say we are just really happy to be part of this, and also really happy to work on a standard that might shape the future of how we do business together, and mostly about the together part, because personally, I believe that in a sustainable economy, it's all about cooperation and teamwork and making sure that customers can actually do business instead of us making most money on it.
Thank you, Marc.
What I would say is it's really exciting time, because if you are in this area of blockchain, trying to put real world assets onto the blockchain, there are so many things going on, and you almost have the fear of missing out, the FOMO, because every day you have a new company, a new project, a new something basically. But what I think is really important is it was not the case, let's say 2 years ago, even like 12 months ago. Traditional players now have appetite to pilot and to work on that, because I think many FI have been burnt with crypto projects or blockchain projects without any purpose or any use cases. And I think banks were not really involved into blockchain, and they're coming back. And I think that's where it becomes interesting, because the likes of ABN, they offer scale, and they're ready to test. And I think together can potentially drive the adoption of the market on this type of technology. Particularly also because now people understand what the blockchain is and the ledger technology, as opposed to like pure crypto assets. So I think it's just, my conclusion is it's very exciting, and we will see big changes over the next 12 months.
Yeah, and for me, I think echoing both of them, but I think what I find very intriguing is that, let's say if you're taking this in the traditional finance space, the three of us would probably see each other as competitors, right? Whereas now there's very much an open collaboration, and actually something like 2Tokens allows us to be able to find new ways of working together, and actually new business opportunities, right, that exist between the three. I think the other thing that I find interesting about this space, and again, as Mark said, obviously it's giving the blockchain technology a kind of a newer veneer, let's put it that way. So it's no longer the volatility of crypto. There's something actually real behind it. And I think one of the key things that we need to do as a group of people is try and kind of disassociate the complexities of crypto and blockchain speak from what we're actually trying to do, which is actually very traditional in many ways, right?
Focus on the functionality
Exactly.
and not on the technology. And the technology is a driver that allows us to do much more than we could do in the past. I can remember about 7 years ago, Arnout and I were working on a trade finance use case. We learned a lot since, and things change a lot as well. But in the end, it's all about functionality. How can we make life easier for everyone that needs money and that has money and still make a decent profit?
That's exactly it.
Okay. Thank you very much all for listening to this 2tokens.org podcast. More information you can find on the 2Tokens website. And if you're interested to join, if you want more information, just reach out to any of us and we'll happy to accommodate you. Thank you very much.
That was it for today's podcast. Thank you for listening in, and please subscribe so you don't miss out on our upcoming episodes. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find our contact details at www.2tokens.org.